All right, so let's sum up. Last week we caught up with who we were, buying the RV, and then the renovations, and then all the other stuff that went along with that, with the repairs and the remodeling and the breakdowns and the repairs. And then we started traveling. And then we went to Paris, which was our dream trip. Madeline was able to see the Eiffel Tower, go all the way up to the top, and then we shared our thoughts and views on that. And then after that, the most important thing about the whole situation was she finally got to touch the butt. To say that the catacombs in France are creepy is an understatement. I mean, it is beautiful, don't get me wrong, but it's just so dead quiet. The only thing you can hear is yourself walking and breathing. There's a few rules you need to know before you go into the catacombs. There is no eating or drinking, flash photography, tripods, selfie sticks, and you want to carry your backpack. And under no circumstances are you allowed to knife hand at any time. So just be aware of that. Now, moving on to the creepy skulls and skeletons, there were tons of them. It was actually very humbling to see just how many remains were down here. It was very, very quiet, like I said, and it was just creepy. You know, when you think about just being around that many skeletons, you know, and when you start thinking that all of these people were real, you know, these were real people that had real lives and real issues and jobs and, you know, soldiers and farmers and kids and everything. It was actually kind of terrifying. You know, they had huge sections, you know, that were divided by sections. You know, like this gentleman here was showing us a section that they had that was right before the Black Plague, you know, and he was very passionate about his work. He knew a lot about the area. He was able to tell us a lot about the history. Some of it was very interesting. Some of it obviously was very terrifying. Some of the skeletons still had teeth, and like one of the things he had said that this skeleton happened, this skull actually had a cavity in it, but they didn't even have refined sugar back in this time. So it was actually quite interesting. Some of the other things that he was able to show us was as how deep and how far back that these rows of bones went. He said in some places they went back 10 meters. You know, when you think that it only takes up about a half of a meter for one row of bones, you can imagine how many people are here. They said that they approximate about 5.6 million remains are down here as of this day. And it is absolutely terrifying to be around that many dead people at once. One of the other things that they had talked about was that it was the most haunted place in all of Paris. The people there that work there do not like to go down there. Once the tourists leave during the day, they like to wrap it up and leave. They say you learn something new every day. And one of the things that we learned, which was actually really, really cool, as he was showing us, is during the Black Plague, they were actually able to identify the remains as they were going through and sorting out the eras that some of the remains were in because of the black rings on the back of the skulls. Now, this was something that we actually didn't know about until he showed it to us, but it was actually really interesting to figure that out. That I don't know if that's where they came with the name of it or what, but it was actually really cool to see that that's how they identify the skulls from that era. So they were able to go through and do it. Now, one of the other things that he was telling us about is that you could also, as you walk through, you could see the history of France, and you could see where the firearms were actually discovered. And as firearms were actually discovered, you could see, like here, the people who were executed or killed in combat actually had bullet holes in their skulls. And he said, and we actually did go back and look through, and before that, there really wasn't any. So we can't argue. Now, as you can see, this just goes on and on and on and on. There was just so many remains down here. It really is humbling, and it just really puts things into perspective of just how many people have been on this earth and how many people have already passed. This gentleman here was telling us stories of how during the Black Plague they really didn't understand, or in any of the plagues, they didn't really understand how it worked. I mean, we don't have they didn't have modern medicine back in that day, so they didn't really understand that how it was transmitted from person to person. So before they figured it out, they used to bring people down there, and they would either lock them up and wait for them to die and then bury some of their remains. Or worse, he said they would take them up on the plaza upstairs, or well, on the street level, and they would actually burn people alive because they didn't know that they thought that fire would cleanse the disease. So they would actually burn people that were infected alive and then throw them down this pit and just pile the bodies up. I mean, it was actually just scary and disturbing all at the same time. He also had led on to the fact that at nighttime, they really don't like being down there. Once the tourists, and it was funny because that was like a common theme. They said that once the tourists leave and they close up during the day, they kind of have to draw whoever gets the short straw is the one who has to go through and clear everything, because they don't like being down there by themselves. You know, they can hear things slamming around, and they can hear things banging, and sometimes they can even hear voices. And he said sometimes you wonder if it's in your head or if you see something, and they really don't like it, which I can imagine. So no matter how bad your day is, just remember, at least you're not getting burned alive and being thrown down this hole for somebody to pile your remains up that are basically in an unmarked grave, and nobody will ever even know where you are. So yeah, it could be a lot worse. Just a side note, the French do not mess around with their metros. They will pack this thing to the brim, and if you're not paying attention and you don't get on when you're supposed to get on, those doors will close and leave you behind. I know a lot of people don't think about this, but just make sure that you keep your head on a swivel while you're out traveling, because these pickpocketers and purse snatchers, they're out everywhere, and the police can only do so much. Hats off to these guys though, because they're out here where it's cold and they're keeping up with it and keeping on top of it. So just be aware.
So we're in Paris, and apparently over here they also do their part, and they just roam by the forest.
Yeah, they don't have forest fires over here either. See, look.
Yeah, no, the pigeons help.
Yeah, even the pigeons help. So they don't have forest fires here. They have plenty of.
Smash it. I love them. That's what you gotta do.
Yeah.